Now's a good time for some questions.
Yeah, we have some questions about guitar stuff specifically.
Okay.
Why do you use tape on your guitar?
We covered that. Okay, that's a good question that we did cover earlier.
Somebody has
we covered
not been
yesterday.
paying attention.
You should go back yesterday and find out why we put guitar tape right here and right here, because it does make a difference when recording. It actually silences some extra kind of
peripheral noise, if you will.
You don't need this stuff ringing out, and then I go and check it out, and you will have your question answered. Yeah.
What about Fractal Audio Axe Effects?
I haven't used it. No one's given it to me for free, so I have not used it, and I don't have. What am I gonna do? You know what? I have gone backwards in the whole world of guitar amping, and then what is it? Simulation, cabinet simulation, and amp simulation.
Profiling.
I've gone as if you track through this whole thing, you'll find out that I started with a pod, and that's how I recorded the first Death Clock stuff. And then I slowly built my own studio where I could turn up amps like we did yesterday as well. And I like the sound of an amp. I like what it does. But you'll see also, I will use whatever is close to me that works and sounds good. That it sounds like a guitar that I can get a good reaction from. I don't have the Fractal Audio stuff. I know people love it though.
Yeah, I've never played with a Fractal. I've played with a Kemper.
Mm-hmm. People love that too.
It's the same neighborhood of technology, I guess. I was really impressed with the Kemper. I can't speak for the Fractal. I hear good things about it. I'll be happy to try one if somebody sent me one.
Yeah.
And the Kemper thing
who's
too. I'll play that again too if somebody sends it over. But I was impressed with the Kemper, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It was actually really fun. But you have the danger of the options. Because you can just go to the internet and load down 10,000 sound combinations of things, and you go like,
that is the same thing that I stay away from, is the multitude of options. And you saw me working, like if you go back to the first thing, go back and watch me try to work Pro Tools. My fat fingers are knocking on things, and I can hardly make it work. I just want to get the song to be recorded, and I want to get the idea down. And the whole idea is that Ulrich and I, again, another reason we work well together is that we like the limitation of options. Even though limitation of options, here we are with 1,000 tracks in an orchestra, But getting the sound down is like, you've got a microphone and you got to do it now. Go.
And they're self-imposed limits, because truly we can have anything we want. You know what I mean? But we've developed this whole thing into a place where we have our go-tos, and we can be creative. We can get the job done. But we're not afraid to plug in a new piece of equipment,
right?
Especially not if somebody sends it to us.
Yes, give it to them already.
Yeah, come on.
I
mean, you see what's going on. Because sometimes you need to get out of a creative rut or something like that, but it's usually during a time when you don't have a deadline.
You know
where
what?
you just experiment with things and have some fun and whatever.
It is great to get a new piece of gear, or to get a new guitar, or get a new pedal, and I love all that stuff, and it does inspire creativity on the opposite side. But yeah, it's funny. I like the sound of amps. I like turning up the amp. I like to hear the wall rumble a little bit, and I like to just hear the pick attack, and I can hear that there's just a different thing. But you know what? I've never played one. I'm sure I'd swear by it too, because a lot of people whom I respect a great deal, who get a great tone, use that stuff. So there you go.
You said you like guitars. We have a question about whether or not you ever mess around with 7 or 8 string guitars for heavier stuff.
I was talking about Steve Vai earlier. He actually gave me one of his Universe 7 strings, and you can hear that on the Death Album 3. There's a song that we have a 7 string on, and that was Ghost Queen is what it's called. It's got this 3/4 kind of feel, and I use it in a weird scoopy kind of I used a very strange pickup combination on that one that just gives it a totally different sound. But that's really cool. And then Gibson made me a 7-string Thunder Horse, which is pretty cool too, that I ended up taking on the road for the Death Album 3. And then I used the legacy amps as well, the Carvin amps too. So the Carvin guys, I did a Carvin. I did a few like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years. I did a bunch of clinics for Carvin, and they ended up building me an 8-string guitar, and it's really cool. I think it's called the DC 800, but it's this beautiful guitar, and I put in some Seymour Duncan passive pickups in there, and it sounds really cool. And my eyes go crazy every time I play it. Like I started having like palpitations because there are so many strings. I don't know where to look.
Too many options.
There are too many options. But you know, when I listen to Meshuggah, it's really cool, and
Sure, yeah.
that all the gent stuff sounds cool. But they're great. They're great. But you know, I have enough. I mean, making 6 work is enough of a thing. But adding, you know, a B and then what is the other one? F sharp underneath there. Yeah. It's crazy. It sounds really cool though, and that guitar really has it's really well built, the Carvin stuff, and it really is. It's actually very, very playable. You just at some point you have to kind of not. I have to just kind of look at the 6-string and then
Keep playing.
and then just keep going. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Did Steve give you your own box fan with the guitar?
He did not give me that. That's just for him. But it was really cool to, you know, between Satriani helping me with all that stuff and Steve Vai loaning me his 421 and a guitar. It's really cool to have guys who are my heroes helping me out and inspiring in different ways. That's really nice of them. They're the coolest guys in the world.
That is cool. What inspires you to go into odd time signatures on occasion, like in Starved or Death Support? What takes you there?
Sometimes, you know, you get sick of a standard time, and every once in a while, like Starved was just a riff I started doing over like a click. There's like a riff on the set, dun 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 dun. So it's like a 3/4 kind of thing that's got a different pattern that repeats in like 6s. So there's cool stuff, and I like odd time stuff. I think it's cool. I like stuff from, what was I listening to yesterday that was something that was really nerd. Oh, you know what came, like a Radiohead tune came on. Anyway, there was a lot of cool, there's nerdy cool 7. I like old Genesis stuff, you know, like, but it's fun, you know, if you're in 4. The idea is when you finish a song, what's different? How do you write a song that doesn't sound like the last song, but still you're utilizing all the same kind of things that make the band the band. So in Death Clock's case, I have low-tuned guitars, I have double kicks, I have to have the sound of Nathan, I have to have the kind of fast guitar leads, and then the harmonies, and maybe a little bit of the keyboard stuff. So that's the sound of Death Clock to me. How do I still make it be Death Clock and be able to explore outside of that a little bit? So Starved is something where we're doing syncopated cool stuff and messing with odd time, and then going back into kind of 4 stuff, you know, and
Sure.
They're just fun experiments, and you know, no one's telling me what to do in any of this stuff. There's no person between me and the listening audience of the records. It's just basically, I like this, it's the record, you know, and it's how I'm feeling at that particular time. And it's, you know, it is a snapshot of that era and how I'm feeling musically, you know, and how this reacts. Death Album 3 is a little bit of a drier album. There's a little bit more just kind of straight bass guitar drums grooving, and that shows up on Starved, which is a reaction to the previous album, which is Galacticon, which was this big, huge ear candy, you know, galaxy of sound. So there you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brendan, what was your setup for home movies like in comparison to Metalocalypse? Those home movies recordings have a very specific sound that I find cheesy and wonderful.
Well, this is what I learned, and this goes back to our whole philosophy, is that, thank you first of all for liking that stuff, is that I had, and this is me building my home studio as early days of home movies. I had a pod. A friend of mine had gotten a Line 6 modeling amp, and it was like early 2000s or late 90s, and I couldn't believe how cool this stuff was. Or like it was late 90s. And I couldn't believe that you could sound like Metallica, and then you could sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then you could switch it and sound like, you know, Eric Johnson or something. And then I saw the pod, and I thought, that's cool. It's a direct line box, and it's the only thing besides the Rockman thing that didn't sound like a squawky Eric Clapton direct line from like old Cream records, you know, where it was just he's plugging into the board, yeah. And so I thought that was cool, and then I found out that Pro Tools there's a Pro Tools free back that you could download, and I think it's 4 tracks, and I could just ping pong everything to one track. And so the early stuff is really, really simple. I think I had a couple drum loops, and I didn't know how to grid it, so I would just kind of cut it and paste it, and they'd be just like a hair off, and everything was just off and wonky and weird and crappy. And then I'd take my pod and in my iMac, you know, the big frosted white one that was all rounded, I plugged my 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch into my headphone jack, and that's how I'd record everything. And it got on TV, but the songs were, you know, kind of memorable, and they were fun, and I, you know, would layer. You could hear a lot of stuff that I do here back on the, like, Franz Kafka rock opera and stuff like that. It's very similar to this stuff, but this is scarier and a darker side to that. But it's all from the same place, and, you know, it's very simple. And then I got, like, kind of big boy stuff, which is a big, you know, Pro Tools HD, and, you know, the D-Command thing that I use to mix and record. And then building the inside, you know, the isolation booth where I can put my amplifiers, where I can put my speaker cabinets and have my amplifiers on the inside and tweak all that stuff, and, you know, be able to make guitars sound like a little bit more natural, you know. So there you go.
Awesome.
That, yeah.
John wants to know, what kind of advice would you give to him or anybody that wants to get their music on TV? Is there sort of a...
Well, I can tell you, I only know one way, and that's the way I did it.
Yeah.
And I went to music school, and while I was in music school, I started taking writing for TV classes, and I started taking the writing part and the comedy part very seriously. And I started doing stand-up, and I started performing, and I said, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this guitar, so I'm gonna put it in the case for a little while, and then I'm gonna go and start doing stand-up and humiliate myself and slowly try to get good. And I realized that it's really hard to be even like a decent guitarist. I'm no slouch. I know how to play guitar, but nobody's really looking for a new guitar player, I learned, but everyone's looking for somebody new to make them laugh. And if you have a sense of humor and you have a personality, no one is really in competition with you. If you're a guitar player that's pretty good, everyone is in competition with you. But no one's gonna be me unless they're ripping me off, but still, then it's not me. So your personality is a big, big deal. The fact that you have one, if you have one, some people don't. But you know, if you've got a personality and a sense of humor, that's a big deal. It's a bigger deal than your musicianship in a lot of ways. So that's how I got in. I was doing comedy one night. That night I happened to be funny. Most of the nights I wasn't. I was on a show with a guy named Ron Lynch, who ended up being on Home Movies, a really great comic. And a comic that not everybody knew at the time, but was really funny, a guy named Louis C.K. And so these group of producers saw me on a good night, and they thought I was friends with those guys, which I wasn't. I just hung out and bothered them. And then I ended up kind of getting into this world of TV and co-creating Home Movies. And I got to hire myself as the musician, and that's how I got on TV. You have to create the show first and hire yourself. Because you know what? If I'm not doing the music on the shows that I created, I'm not doing any music. I'm not doing any voiceover. The only reason I get work is if I create it first and then hire myself as a voiceover. You hear my voice on anything else? Not really. A couple of things. But it's mostly because I don't know, I'm pushy, but I also have I'm a control freak and I'm pushy, but that's what you want in a guy that creates a TV show. You want someone who kind of gets the job done and knows what he's doing to a degree. So that's my only advice I can give, is what otherwise, good luck. I don't know how to do it. I really don't, because I don't know the entry point really.
Yeah. How do you usually go about the lyric writing process for a show, and how did that differ from your approach to Doomstar?
Well, lyric writing, like this song, let's say for this song here, my main, the thing I would say is you need to write the song, you need to get it done. And I will say what I think about lyrics, I love Queen, I love Freddie Mercury, I love his voice, but I'm not listening to the words. I'm listening to the tonality of the words, and I'm listening to the energy and the sound of the word. That's almost more important. And oftentimes, when in doubt, here's my rule, when in doubt, be vague. Because you can create some kind of an idea, and not everyone's listening. You're just casting this kind of idea and this splash of words that sometimes evokes a mood. And that's sometimes cool, but sometimes I'm very literal. I've written songs about the brutality of comedy, and it's very literal, and it's from my own experience about how comedy is the most brutal thing in an episode about comedy. I wrote, like I said, that really just absurdist feminist song called Andromeda, which I really like the lyrics of, and they're really brutal, and they're really, really hardcore, and it's you know, it's from a woman's point of view, and it's from a man's point of view who's being killed by a woman, and it's just really brutal, but it's really fun. I see the comedy in that. So those are these things that I think are really, I think my favorite lyrics, I think, are not the funny ones, but they're all over Death Album 3. I think that's my favorite lyrics. I think Crush the Industry has a lot of fun. It's just anti-money, just like anti-matter, like everything is nothing, there's nothing left. Money is made up, things just are gone. The housing market crash, all that stuff, that's all totally brutal, and that to me is an interesting subject, and I'd like to just make that as horrible sounding as possible and laughing at it at the same time. So check out Death Album 3 for lyrics, but for the Doomstar, I'm telling a very, very literal story. So what I did for that was I worked with two other writers just to beat down story, beat out the idea of an outline, which is the most important thing when writing a story, is making sure you're knowing where your story goes. So I worked with two other writers, Mark Brooks and Janine DiTullio, who is also on Home Movies. She played the mother after Paula Poundstone left. And she's a super smart writer, and we would just sit there and talk about story. It's almost like when the Doomstar happened, the first meeting, I had to basically have the idea. It may not be perfect, but here's the idea. It's just like how I did at the very top of this thing. This may not be perfect, it may not be specific yet, but here's the idea. I'm gonna pitch it to you. So I've got to come up with something so everyone else has something to do. So in that case, I said, I know these sequences. I know that I want to start out with the birth of this star. I know that this is gonna influence this thing, and this is gonna pretty much kind of start to cast the very beginning of the end of the whole thing, of the end of the whole series. And I went through every little beat and said, this has to happen, this has to happen. Toki has been captured, but Toki is now, I'd like to see him try to just muscle through this horribleness, and through Abigail, he's gonna find his happiest moment in his life and just hold on to that while he's in this terrible place until he gets rescued. So we go back, and I wanted to track through the inception of Death Clock once they finally got Magnus out of the band. If you don't know what I'm talking about yet, go watch the thing. It's really fun, and how Toki actually first auditioned in the band. That's all story that I found very interesting and cool, and backstory, and still pertains to what this story is really about. So there's a lot of stuff, and I have to have themes. I have to have, the whole idea is basically that these guys, as much as they think that they're tough, as brutal as they think they are, they need each other and they love each other, and it's so brutal to admit that's the ultimate brutality, and they're brothers. So how do I go from these nihilists from the first episode, these horrible self-serving jerks, to a family? And that's the big trajectory of the whole show. So you have to have all that stuff going on, spinning in the back of your head. And then I have this outline, and each one of these songs, I have an idea about. So at the top of this thing, I have to talk about these monks seeing this thing, and the Ishnifis character, the one that's played by Werner Herzog in the previous season. I have to know what the tone is, and there are parts that I'm thinking of, like I'm trying to think of like a place to hang my hat. Like, what does this remind me of? This is from Jesus Christ Superstar. This is the Judas overture, where he's saying like, I don't like what I'm seeing here. I don't dig any of this stuff, and things are changing, and everything's dangerous, and it's getting worse. And I wanted to kind of use that as a template. Later on, Toki gets in the band in that sequence, and I'm thinking tonally, not musically, but tonally, it's from Annie, the musical, when she goes into Daddy Warbucks' house, and she's like, I think I'm gonna like it here. That's what Toki's doing right there. So I'm having a place, and I'm thinking, how can I be a hero? It's the most self-serving song about this guy who would rather be, he thinks, anyway, you get the idea of all that stuff. So each one of these things, I have to have a tone, I have to have a point of view, and it has to be funny. I have to know where the jokes are coming from, too. So there you go. That's, in a nutshell, that's the whole wash of the Doomstar. You've got a question.
Do I have mine?
Yep. Grab it.
They told me they were going to yell at me if I didn't. So South Park did a stage thing. Would the rock opera be kind of like a bridge between TV and stage? Do you think it would play? Would it be too difficult to do any of the?
I don't. You know what?
The only way I think
it's cool. I loved what South Park. I think is the funniest animated thing on TV. I think they've got a reason for being on TV. They've got this major. They're satirical, and not a lot of shows are. Some of them are just joke machines, and they always have something to say. And I was so blown away by their thing, the Book of Mormon, which is just so musical, and just some of the best storytelling, and just so funny, and just belly laughs from everybody. And I'm cynical. I just don't laugh that much. I just go, oh, that's pretty good. But that night that I saw it was so funny. Anyway, I don't know that I would do anything with this. I know that in this instance, with this orchestra, with the amount of voices I have, with whatever, I can do this with the amount of money that I have. Those things cost millions of dollars. That's out of my reach right now. And I already did what I wanted to do, and I got to do it the way I wanted to do it. So, I don't know. Yeah. There you go. Hopefully that answers something.
For sure. Have you ever considered releasing instrument stems for Death Clock songs like Nine Inch Nails does?
I don't know if there were a market for that, if people were interested. I don't know how to anticipate that. All I know is that if there were enough people out there that were interested in that, then I'd say, yeah, you can make them downloadable. We could probably do it. I haven't downloaded anything. And like I said, I saw the Queen thing once, but I don't really. And then I heard some of Eddie Van Halen's guitar stems from like Van Halen 1, which is really cool to listen to because it sounds like him by himself. But I don't know, maybe someday in the future. You know?
Yeah, I never really use anything. Like I don't find the need myself to like go play with those kind of stems, but I hear that other people.
Some people do maybe, and maybe that does help people.
There's a thing about like getting remixes done that way from fans,
right?
Which could be kind of fun, you know.
Sure. I don't know. I mean, my main interest with recording is getting a song that I think is cool out to people who may think it's cool, and it isn't like I don't know. This is the most in-depth we've ever gotten with anything technical, and it's cool to have this be out there because it really does. I think it walks people through exactly what the process is from beginning to end, and I think that's cool. That this is probably better than that. I think to watch this whole sequence is probably more important than listening to our stems. But maybe, who knows? What do I know?